Hello and welcome to Brando Tech Info. So today we're talking about the Sony Experia 5 Mark II. And if it seems like Sony just released the flagship phone not that long ago, you're not wrong. Just a few short months ago, Sony released the Xperia 1 Mark II. And this phone is very, very similar on the spec sheet. The cameras are very similar. In fact, I'm not going to talk too much about this phone. If you want to know more about this phone, I recommend just watching the Xperia 1 video, which can be found here. But essentially, very similar. I'm just going to go over some of the differences real quick before we go over the US compatibility with our frequency bands. So the biggest difference between the two phones is the size and the screen. So the screen on the Xperia 1 Mark II was a 6.5 inch screen. This is a 6.1 inch screen. And in fact, Sony is calling this a compact device. I'm not sure that 6.1 inches is exactly compact, but they're going with it. And I guess when compared to 6.5, it is a little bit smaller. But an even bigger difference, or just as big a difference, is that this screen is not 4K. The Xperia 1 Mark II screen is a 4K screen, which really kind of set it apart and made it kind of different. But what it sacrificed with that 4K screen was high refresh. The Xperia 1 did not have high refresh rate. It had only a 60 Hertz refresh rate, whereas the Xperia 5 Mark II has a 120 Hertz refresh rate. You're giving up the 4K, but you're getting the higher refresh, which I think for most people will be an appreciated change. A lot of people really like high refresh rates, and I'm not sure the 4K screen could really be noticed on a screen the size of a smartphone screen. So this is probably a good switch up for Sony. Another difference between the two phones is a slight difference. The Xperia 1 Mark II had a time of flight sensor with the camera setup. This phone does not. However, the rest of the camera array seems to be exactly the same, with a primary lens, an ultra-wide lens, and a 3x telephoto lens. The only other real difference with the cameras, and it's not even with the camera hardware that it's different, but with what the cameras can do, Sony claims that this is the first smartphone ever to be able to record 120 frames per second in 4K. I'm not sure how useful that's going to be to most people, but it's there if you are. Finally, just a couple more noticeable differences between the two phones. The Xperia 5 does not have wireless charging, where the Xperia 1 did. The Xperia 5 has a designated Google Assistant button, which is kind of interesting because it is right next to the designated shutter button on this phone. So we'll see if that creates an issue for anybody in the reviews of this phone as it comes out in the next few months. It probably won't, but it is an interesting decision by Sony to put another mechanical button on this phone, especially one so close to the shutter button that was already there. As I said before, the rest of the specs on this phone are almost identical to the Xperia 1 Mark II, including the processor, which is the Snapdragon 865 processor, not the 865 Plus. This will be disappointing to some people. I've talked about this in some videos in the past. There's actually not that much of a difference between those two processors in real world performance, especially if you factor in thermal throttling. A lot of phones run hotter with the Plus processor, so I really don't think you're missing out on much there. In addition, headphone jack fans can rejoice because it has kept that as well. Finally, this phone will go on sale on September 29th with a ship date of December 4th. That's still a long way off. It's kind of interesting that Sony is deciding to open up sales that much before the ship date, but that's what they're doing. As far as the price of this device, Sony has not given at least as of this date, Sony has not given a specific price for this product, but most people are expecting it to come in somewhere between $800 and $950, which is a bit cheaper than the $1,200 they asked for the Xperia 1 Mark II. So overall, that's probably a good thing. So will this phone work on US carriers? And similar to the Xperia 1 Mark II, it is kind of a mixed bag. So right off the top, no 5G. You will not get 5G functionality with this phone. Now, the news about 4G on the three other main carriers is pretty good. So on Verizon, it uses all 5 of their 4G frequency bands, so you're definitely covered there. On AT&T, it uses 7 out of 9 of their frequency bands, including all of their primary frequency bands, so you should get pretty good coverage with AT&T. And with T-Mobile, it uses 5 out of 6 of their 4G frequency bands. It uses all of their main frequency bands, so you should get pretty good coverage there. In short, you're You're in good shape with 4G on all the carriers, but you're not getting any 5G on any of the carriers. Once again, I think this is a really questionable move by Sony. The US smartphone market is the most lucrative smartphone market in the world, at least in the area of margins. Smartphone companies can get away with selling phones here for a lot more than they can in most other parts of the world. This is a flagship priced phone, so I'm not exactly sure why you wouldn't build it to have 5G functionality here in the US. Now granted, this phone is a lot cheaper than the Xperia 1, which had no 5G functionality here. So, I think it's a little bit of an easier pill to swallow, but still, $800 or $900 or $950 for a smartphone in 2020 that does not use 5G, I think it's going to be a very tough sell, at least to people who aren't really hardcore Sony or camera enthusiasts. But those are just my thoughts. What are your thoughts about the Sony Experia 5 Mark II? Do you think it will sell here in the US? And are you interested in getting one yourself? Let me know down in the comments. As always, I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Rando Tech Info, signing out.